Okay, Prynhawn da, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Swansea Public Service Board. We'll go to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies from Deanne Martin, but we do have Joanne Stevens with us today.
Thank you, Alison. So welcome, Joanne, to the meeting. And we also have just joining us now, Hannah Wharf, our new Welsh Government representative. So a very warm welcome to Hannah for the first meeting of the Public Service Board. Okay, so we'll move on then to item 2, which is disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. We haven't been notified of any, but does anybody wish to declare anything? Okay, no, thank you. So we go on to item 3, minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody happy that the minutes are accurate? Again, I haven't heard any notifications otherwise, so thank you for that. And item 4, public question time. Alison, I don't believe we've had any public questions.
No, Chair, we haven't.
Okay, thank you. So that takes us on nicely then to item 5, which is update on the 8 steps in the Public Service Board's 2023 to 24 action plan, and also to the future actions for 24-25. So if I go to the first step, which is led by the Swansea Bay University Health Board, and we've got Karen Stapleton with us this afternoon. Karen, over to you for an update on transforming early years services across Swansea.
So this is an overview of where we are with the early years integration and the work we've been doing to take that forward in Swansea, but also across with Newport Talbot as well. As early years is clearly something we're doing across both PSBs, which is, I suppose, is really particular to this particular step. So I suppose the early years integration is a challenging space, and there's a very challenging landscape with a number of agencies across Swansea. As I said, Newport Talbot provides services across the whole range of the pathways. And historically, there hasn't been sort of clear governance and a bit of a lack of strategic focus. And some of the first steps that are in this plan are around us trying to get that clear governance and ownership of taking forward that. So as you can see, the first one was around identifying a sponsor for early years and to bring together the whole range of things that are happening in that early years landscape. So the early years maturity matrix, the pathfinder monies that came from Welsh Government, and then dovetailing that with the objectives that come from the PSB wellbeing plan as well was one of the first tasks. So as you can see, the Health Board is now clearly assigned the lead there, and we're taking forward the work through a subgroup that is set up underneath this group, which is an early years steering group, and that is co-chaired by the Health Board and by the Public Health team in Swansea Bay, with a whole range of agencies and partners across both PSBs and local authorities. So in terms of what we need to do then to align that work was update the terms of reference, and that's been done. And in discussions recently across both PSBs, and a review of the people in that space, I think it's been acknowledged that we have a lot of operational people, and there's a lot of really good work happening at operational level, but actually we probably needed to get some more senior strategic leadership into that space. And I've had discussions with senior colleagues in both local authorities around that to make sure we've got the sort of the good governance up into organisations to get the strategic sort of direction agreed. So that's the first 2 of our steps. And then the action plan moves then to where we are amber, and this is 2 areas. One is around developing performance measures, and also one of our aims at the start was to develop an early years maternity and strategy, early years and maternity strategy across the 2 PSBs to try and get some of that more strategic focus to then pin the work that we're doing at operational level. And since I reported on this in October, I've been working with the Newport Talbot, and they're starting to develop their own strategy. And so what we've what we've done since then is recognise that actually, you know, we're not going to stop them doing that. We wanted to try and get an integrated strategy, but what we've recognised is actually we do still need to get some high-level principles agreed for how we're doing integration regionally, given, as I said, this is a complex space. And I think that's where we are now, having met with say senior people in both local authorities. I think it's more about getting a set of strategic principles that we can sign up to, and work is actively being taken forward now in that space to develop some principles we can bring back to these boards to get us both signed up to, and that will help us then with our direction. And I think following that, then we'll need to start to develop. So what are the measures? What are the outcomes we want from bringing that integration of services on the ground together? And so in a way, getting the principles first will then form where we want to go with measuring that. I think there's a lot of good work that's come out from the Pathfinder work and the early years integration that's been going on. Our public health team in Swansea have been doing a deep dive into the outcomes of that. And from that, there's some really good lessons that we would not want to sort of lose in terms of what we're doing at the moment on the ground, but also that's going to help inform us in terms of some of the measures and metrics that we want to be seeing as we, you know, really integrate our pathways. So that's sort of update on that. In terms of, by the end of March, we'll have a draft a draft set of principles that we'll then want to socialise and engage appropriately with stakeholders and bring them back then through the PSBs to be signed off. So you know, I think whilst there has been challenges, you know, and there has been also lots of success over the last, I think, you know, good few years. There's a good commitment to on the ground to improve early years integration. I think, you know, some of the challenges around separate organisational agendas, and that's health agenda as much as local authorities having slightly different sort of strategic direction. So that lack of alignment doesn't help give some of the direction that we need on the ground. As I said, getting the right people, the senior decision makers involved, it would be helpful as well. I think it is worth touching on that the Welsh Government have withdrawn funding for some of the Pathfinder work, which was money that was coming through the Health Board in the integration space. But there's a lot of good, so that's funding for health visitors, speech and language support, which was really doing some good work in this integration space. But that good work needs to be built on. And going forward, the focus is going to be on, you know, removing the barriers around transformation, and really moving to get that aligned vision, universal offer for families, with a set of principles agreed between us, and a regional pathway then that we can measure success and outcomes on. So I suppose that's where we are. Yeah, we haven't quite achieved by the end of this year what we said we'd do in terms of the strategy, but I think we've got a good direction forward, and I suppose that's open to comments, Chair, and any questions on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Do we have any comments from partners on the call today? No? Okay, and obviously that will feed into the next steps for next year, as you said. So that's great. Thank you for the update. Very much appreciated. So we will go on then to building on Swansea as a human rights city. I believe we don't have Adele on the call today, Ness, but we do have you. So we'll hand up to you for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, to explain why we haven't got Adele on the call today, which is exciting. There's a UNESCO conference going on today on human rights, and Adele and Councillor Elliot King are there representing the Public Service Board to talk about the work that we've been doing on Human Rights City. And I wasn't able to attend the session myself, but I understand it went extremely well, and some good networking and connections have been made with other organisations as part of that event. So in terms of the Human Rights City step, it is showing as amber for 23-24, and that is really just because some of the timelines that we'd set for delivery were delayed. So first of all, in terms of the action plans, the first action was that we would develop a detailed action plan to how each PSB member would take forward the priorities identified for Human Rights City. A number of organisation partners, thank you, we have now got action plans in place, and those actions were publicised at the event in December, which marks the anniversary of our signing the Declaration of a Human Rights City. The second action for 23-24 was the establishment of a stakeholder panel, and this has taken a little bit longer to implement than had been hoped, but it is part of the Swansea Council action plan going forward. And at the moment, in this financial year, we have established a page on our website which enables individuals and organisations to sign up if they're interested in becoming part of our stakeholder panel. The form on the website closes on the 29th of February. We have seen quite a lot of interest so far, which is great. And the plan will be that the stakeholder panel members will receive a newsletter twice a year, and also that there will be a stakeholder panel event once a year, probably in December, to coincide with that anniversary, where we can look back at achievements of the previous year and then work together on actions that we can progress in the following year. In terms of 24-25, so the steering board, the Human Rights City Steering Board has been thinking about what actions we should be putting in place for next year. And the first one of those will be very much about implementing the actions that we PSB partners have individually signed up to undertake within their organisations. The second one then is how we go about trying to promote the work of the Human Rights City and raise awareness of human rights across the city. And so part of that will be about creating a newsletter, a biannual newsletter, having an annual survey through which we can assess whether we are having an impact on individuals within the city with the work that we're doing, and then also, as I say, getting this stakeholder panel and event established and embedded during 24-25. So happy to take any questions, but hopefully that provides the PSB with an update at this point in the financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ness. Excellent update. And do we have any questions or comments? No. So we look forward to seeing the detailed plan coming forward. Okay, thank you for that. So we'll move on then to the update from Natural Resource Wales. We've got Howell with us this afternoon on the step working towards Swansea's net zero target and nature recovery. And I think we've also got Jane Richmond on the call with us as well. So Howell, over to you.
Lovely, thank you very much for the introduction, Chair. Yeah, and before I kick off, I'd just like to pass a big thanks on to Jane and Helen, Jane Richmond and Helen Green, for all the work that they've done so far. So far, as far as the RAG status goes, the project work is all on green for the three first quarters of this current year, and it looks likely it'll be on green as well for the final quarters. That's reassuring to know. Big focus of the work now is how to look and how we deliver the climate change and nature recovery adaptation mitigation strategy for the county, city and county, okay, and how we take forward that work for this coming year and for the next 4 or 5 years, recognising the challenges and the need to undertake that work as part of the wellbeing goals set out. So far, that work is proceeding well. There's a contract being let as well, using funding secured by the team, and so far that contract has been awarded, and the group has met, the key group of officers have met with the successful suppliers to tailor and take forward the action plan on that front. Some concerns looking longer term around the funding sources to undertake and support this work. At the moment, we're very conscious around the public sector that funding streams are perhaps becoming more limited, certainly from an NW position where in the past we did have some grant support for certain work areas. They're no longer there, so that'll be a challenge, and I guess maybe an expectation that we'll have to do more in-house with our own staff rather than look to consultants to help support that. But so far, the PSB has supported this fund so far. Also positively, there's some work also been done and supported by the PSB here in collaboration with Neath around the food agenda. So that's another positive outcome as well. So far everything's on track, but I'm happy to open the floor to Jane, who's probably closer to the work than I am. So Jane, do you have any questions and want to update any further?
Thank you, Howell. Jane, did you want to add anything?
Thank you. All I was really going to say at this point is yes, we've just appointed the contractor to start the work for this coming year. And as far as then taking the work forward for an action plan going forward, we're obviously having to wait until this piece of work has been completed so that we can actually formulate a meaningful action plan from that. So, but we are within our timescales, so that's great.
Okay, great, very positive. Thank you both. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, thank you for that. And so we move on then to an update from Roger Thomas from the Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service on making Swansea safer, more cohesive and prosperous. Over to you, Roger.
Great, thank you, Chair. Yeah, you'll recall, if I wind this back a little bit in terms of our approaches here, some of the comments and feedback that we've had through scrutiny has been, this would have happened anyway type sort of feedback, and how much of it is actually collaborative and how much does it align to the Wellbeing of Future Gens, 5 ways of working and that sort of thing. So we deliberately took a different stance this year and 3 focused public well, 2 public events, I should say, and 1 collaborative partnership event as well. So they were sort of from a chronological perspective. The start of June, we had the Wales Firefighter Challenge, which was based in Castle Gardens in Swansea. Really successful, lovely weather, so great. Always makes it a bit easier, doesn't it? And some good support from partners in terms of that. So a lot of people there, a lot of stalls. We held a community safety village, and real good engagement from partners moving forward. So a lot of feedback came through that, a lot of referrals, a lot of information sharing in the various stalls as well. So a real successful event at the start of June. We then ran, which I'm hoping will become a sort of feature of the PSB in terms of walking in your shoes event, learning a little bit more about individual organisations, how we can link up better, how we can work more collaboratively, and how we can sort of join the dots really in terms of better public services. So we ran a walking in your shoes event in October down at Earlswood at our training base. And we had various presentations there on a range of subjects, particularly focused, I should say. Obviously, the operational element is an aspect that we, along with our sort of blue light partners, like I see Chris is on the line, but also sort of WAST as well. Those blue light emergencies and other first responders as well. So it would have been of interest, I'm guessing, but there was probably limited opportunity really to engage in that space for future working, albeit clearly on larger incidents we engage with emergency planning, social services, and the impact, particularly in recovery phase from a major incident as well. So there's lots of information passed in and around that, but of particular focus were 2 areas, I suspect. One was on community safety and how we work in the sort of safeguarding, hoarding, and that space as well. We work out in terms of target hardening and that space as well. So work really productively and collaboratively with partners from a range of agencies, public and third sector as well. That was really good. But more interestingly, I suspect, in terms of the building safety aspect, so of the 89 high-rise buildings that cover our patch, 87 are in Swansea. So a particular focus, post-Grenfell, in terms of building safety legislation, how we can work together. And there were some colleagues that came in from Swansea City Council who were particularly focused on how we can work better together, because our remit from a building safety legislative perspective has changed in terms of where we engage at different points of the planning and build stage as well. So that was really helpful. And then also engaging from an environmental perspective and into so Howell's world as well, how we can work with NRW and other partners then to improve in terms of, and touching on some of the work that goes on within our wider PSB work as well. Some really good, some great feedback as well in terms of partners. So Again, I think there's a stepping stone for other partners to conduct a similar event, and I'm happy to be part of that as well. And the third was our safeguarding conference then that we ran in November. That was in Liberty Stadium, and again, well attended. Could be better, I should say, but it's always challenging. Big thanks to Amanda Carr for all her hard work for getting that event off the ground. But again, it was a collaborative in terms of the setting up the work and getting everybody together. A number of really good workshops that we ran that were well attended and well received as well, and some really positive feedback that we've had in terms of that engagement as well. So 3 very different but sort of aligned events in terms of the theme being engagement, collaborative working, identifying opportunities for partnership and the like as well. I will say that and there was a touch earlier in terms of some of the cuts of funding from Welsh Government. We have been affected this year again in terms of reduction of arson funding. So I think our community safety work will have to obviously step up into that space as well. And again, working with partners, particularly within the arson wildfire season as well. So that's really positive. Moving forward and I look forward, the Wales Firefighter Challenge will again take place in June this year in Swansea. Castle Gardens, I understand will be out of commission for a little while while some renovation work goes on there, but we've pushed the event along now in and around, just trying to think, from the Lloyds Bank, Barclays Bank up that way, so a little bit further up. And again, a real invitation to partners to get involved in terms of having a stall there and getting your key messages out. I appreciate it's on a Saturday. It's difficult sometimes to get staff out there to engage out of normal or working hours. But a lot of real positive feedback in terms of messages as well. And also we are looking to run. Let me just get my notes up. Another workshop seminar conference on targeting prevention. We've got a notional date as well on the 20th of November. We're hoping to run that at Liberty, shouldn't call it the Liberty Stadium, Swansea.com Stadium. And again, in the same light as we did last year, hopefully more people and more engagement as well. But we're going to use what they call the World Cafe method to get participants together and get partnership working and engage some of that conversation as well. And again, in workshops and the like as well. So that's in its formative stages of being organised as well. We've done the main parts of it, but again, we'll be reaching out to partners closer to the date to engage as well. So yeah, a lot of good work has gone on. We tried to take a different focus. We've tried to take the feedback that we've had from the scrutiny group and reshape things and come up with more tangible visual events as well. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Roger. And I know one particular area of interest and focus for scrutiny is how the PSB connects to the public and how we reach out to communities. And the events that you've mentioned are an excellent toolkit really to be able to do that. It's almost like taking Public Service Board on the road, isn't it? And taking it out to communities. So, really good work there and some really good opportunities for collaboration and partnership as well. I've got a number of hands up, so I'll go to Ness first and then to Howell. Ness?
Thank you. And thanks, Roger. I think I was just going to offer Leanne's support on behalf of the PSB to kind of help you make connections with partners if that helps, and also just to ask if we have another organisation identified for doing the walking in my shoes the next session or not, if we need to do that as a group.
Yeah, I think we had an offer from Natural Resource Wales, I believe, last time we got together. So I think Natural Resource Wales were offering the in their shoes event next.
Fine, I can pick that up, Andrea. So no problem at all.
That would be great. Thank you, Howell.
Yeah, no worries at all. They were lovely.
And over to you.
They ought to be. Yes, I just wanted to personally thanks Ness and Roger and the whole team for the safeguarding event at Swansea.com. I'll get the words right this time, Roger. So although it still known as the Liberty Stadium to me, there was an excellent event back in November, and there was a lot of interest. Always a challenge trying to get associated groups there, but there were some inspirational groups and talkers there. I got to say, there was a presentation by an individual on the impact of hoarding on individual well-being and health, and I've got to say that was really well, it was fantastic, and I think anyone working in the health, kind of in a mental health sector and those challenges, it was a fantastic presentation from a fantastic young individual who'd set up a business, bought that. So I'm not sure, Roger, it might be worth kind of at some point circulating those details wider and trying to engage that individual to look at their wider work, maybe as far as cross into kind of Newport Talbot and Swansea, because at the moment I think the individual just works in the Newport area, but it was quite inspirational. So thank you, Roger, for this, and thanks, Ness, for all support with that. And yes, happy to pick up the walking shoes and events over the next few months. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Howell. Roger, did you want to come back?
Yeah, thanks to both Ness and Howell. It was very much, and if one of the observations, or I wouldn't say criticisms, or it did feel like that at the time, was that we're doing things in silos and we're not working. This hasn't been. So, you know, even from planning an event in terms of the Wales Firefighter Fitness Challenge, that, you know, it reached out to Swansea City Council to have access into the space. We worked then in terms of risk assessments. We, you know, worked with colleagues from all agencies, police, from City Council, from, you know, blind dogs for the blind dogs for the guide dogs for the blind, I should say, blind dogs for the guides. That's another group. Yeah, so a whole range of groups that came in together, and it was really, really positive. I think it could be better. I think there were groups that were probably conspicuous by their absence there, and I think, you know, we need to really push hard to get, because we've got plenty of space as we move further up sort of Oxford Street as well, and there's a lot of opportunity, I think, to really embrace that and make it an annual event that gets better and bigger and more engaged as we move forward. So yeah, the Howell made reference to the a young lady who did a fantastic presentation on hoarding it's called Holistic Hoarding. I'll put the link to her website in the chat in a moment. She was inspirational, absolutely inspirational. It was a real, I think, one of the best workshops I've ever attended in any aspect as well. So I'll put the, you know, and if you have any links, if there are any issues in your respective organisations in respect of hoarding, I would highly recommend her coming along. She is a fantastic speaker and really does get to the heart of the issues as well. So yeah, thanks very much indeed.
Great, thank you, Roger. Thank you for the update, very positive. So we move on now to developing Swansea's integrated cultural offer, and just extending a warm welcome to Tracy McNulty, who's going to be leading on this step. Tracy, over to you.
Thanks, all. I'm going to take the opportunity at some stage as well to introduce my colleague, Nerys Evans. So in terms of the last year, and with our most recent report, as some of you will recall from the last time I came here, we had two key strands of work that we had, you know, put forward as being the bedrock of what we felt we needed to do in order to start to build an integrated offer. That when we felt those key strands of work were advanced enough and felt solid, that we would then put forward our action for the coming year, which is what we've done for 24-25. As that strategy. So in terms of where we've been, I'll ask Nerys to talk about the creative network, because she's our appointed lead on that now. But I'll just talk a little bit, because I don't have my colleague from the sports team here. I'll talk a little bit about the successes and why that's green looking backwards. We, as the sports health wellbeing team for the local authority, work hand in glove with a number of agencies, number of education providers, colleges, universities, clubs, community groups, and so on, because we are funded by Sport Wales. We have a key indicator to reach adult weekly participation of 150 minutes a week in sports, physical activity, and young people to participate for 5 hours or more per week. With our target in this past year, that's monitored carefully. We obviously wouldn't be able to achieve that unless we work in in a really clear partnership framework, but that's monitored through school surveys as well as working with Freedom Leisure, doing assessments, bringing in as much as we can in terms of the specific programs with our BME sports project, our young ambassadors. We've got Us Girls Street Games program, some targeted delivery in areas where we know the participation is low. And as I say, working with both universities to ensure that we are working from the grassroots right through to the sort of elite as well, with the stronger facilities. We're in the midst of defining and agreeing the relationship with Sports Wales going forward, because they've introduced a new regional strategy. So they are changing their entire governance structure for how they fund sports participation, health monitoring. They're setting that up through regional boards. So we're an active participant in that. We have some colleagues from Swansea sitting on those shadow boards at the moment as well. So we're just, in terms of going forward, we're just in the midst of making sure that Swansea is really strongly represented in that regional governance for allocating resources to sports going forward. So that's kind of looking backwards. We are waiting for some survey results to come in, because from the young person survey, because they're not ready within this financial year. But all other indicators are that we're on target to deliver on that. Certainly the objectives agreed with the national framework, but we will then be in a clearer position with the regional boards to ensure there's a strong governance role within a cultural strategy go forward. That's our key ambition for next year's step. And I mentioned having as many individuals from the PSB as can be and should be on that sort of partnership approach to that strategy, because it won't be a local authority strategy. It will need to be a city and further afield, crossing many sectors, because culture being how we live as well as going to galleries and museums and things. But in terms of the detail of the second strand of that for the creative network, which we felt was a really critical element of having an integrated cultural offer, was to understand the infrastructure from those that participate in arts, cultural activity, through to those who want employment, those who deliver it for others, and those who are offering training in it. It's a very, very broad church in that respect. So developing that creative network and understanding the data that would underpin any segmentation and what do we mean by culture and so on. My colleague Nerys Evans has joined us a few months ago to help deliver that amongst it's about 20 odd other projects within our forthcoming programme. So Nerys, can I hand to you to introduce yourself and to do some a detailed update on where we are with that work? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, and warm welcome to you, Nerys. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Tracy, for the introduction. Lovely to be here and to meet you all. So I was appointed in October of last year. I've spent probably a couple of months just sort of settling into the role, but certainly one of the priority objectives for me was to kind of look at the Creative Swansea network, which is one of about 6 shared prosperity funded projects that I've taken strategic lead on. And the Creative Swansea network is essentially a network for the creative and cultural sector of Swansea. Our first task was to appoint a Creative Swansea coordinator, which we have done, and that coordinator started in post in January. Our next step really is to be able to size and segment the sector, the creative and cultural sector of Swansea. And that's just to really get an understanding of who are our priority sectors in Swansea as current state. So it's almost like a baseline report of that sector. And just to kind of clarify that we are looking at economic prosperity, but also the role of culture as part of our identity and place within Swansea, which has, of course, all sorts of spillover effects in terms of community cohesion, health and well-being. So that segmentation is hopefully happening. We're aiming to get a report by the end of this month into next month. From there, we're going to then create a sort of roundtable session, which will be a needs analysis of those key sectors. And we're likely to bring in sort of potentially sort of definitely local businesses and local organisations, but also looking on a sort of a national scales as well. So, for example, if there are skills organisations that work on key sectors in Swansea, then we would probably welcome them into that advisory, into that board, into that sort of roundtable session. Apologies. From there, we're probably going to then create an advisory board to sort of help steer the network, which will be sort of sector-led. And we are aiming to essentially launch the Creative Swansea network around about the summertime. So what will happen from the launch is basically going to be informed by our needs analysis. So we are at the moment, we assume at the moment that we're going to have a digital portal, which will kind of offer news and opportunities and so forth for the network. We will hopefully build a directory over time of our sort of network members. And we anticipate that we will be holding a series of events or a flagship event, which will sort of reflect the needs analysis work that was done early on. So that's a kind of brief summary of current status where we anticipate being in the next few months. Thank you.
Great, thank you both for the updates. Any questions or comments? No, very much appreciated, thank you. So we'll move on to a stream of steps now from Ness and Richard Rowlands. So the first one being influencing and connecting with other governance arrangements across the Swansea Bay region. Over to you both.
So thank you, Andrea. I've asked Richard to update on these because these are very much linked to our governance arrangements rather than being sort of service specific or sector specific. And they are all interlinked. So Richard's going to give you an overall update which shows where we are across these various governance elements of data, performance management, and governance structures. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ness, and welcome, Richard. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to start with step 6 and just to recap what this step is about, it's really based upon the idea that partnerships like the PSB, in order for them to be successful, need to have relevant terms of reference and also clear lines of accountability. And that also means avoiding duplication and looking to see where there might be gaps in the partnership landscape as it relates to the work of the PSB. And because many public services and third sector partners are engaged in several partnerships covering a range of different issues, what we're doing with this step is to pull together a register of local partnerships that are involved in one way or another with the PSB, and then mapping them. And then once we have that, we can then look for opportunities to simplify and streamline and align the work of the PSB with that wider partnership landscape, and where possible, try and improve how it all works and join it up better with what the PSB does to avoid duplication and close gaps and so on. So the first part of the step has been to map the regional partnership landscape, and we've gathered information on the different partnerships in Swansea, including the terms of reference, the meeting frequency and the membership and so on. And we've populated a table with all that information, and we're now in the process of meeting with individual partners to reconcile the information that we have, making sure that it's accurate and that it's comprehensive, and then to produce the partnership map, which we will then develop by March and then refine as we go along. And I think it'll also be a useful starting point as well as a source document for the next action in the step, when the chair will look to meet with other partnership chairs to discuss the PSB and look for opportunities to collaborate where that helps with the work of the PSB, which we suggest is done once the partnership map has been finalised. So that's a brief summary of where we are at the moment, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you, Richard. Are you taking us through the next two steps?
I am,
So,
Chair.
yeah, so step 7 then is
Okay.
improving data quality and accessibility across the Swansea Bay region. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the idea behind this step, two things really. One is that that there's a good understanding of the data that's needed to support the delivery of the wellbeing plan, and also for opportunities for sharing data, particularly with the RPB. And then in terms of that, the development and the rollout of a digital portal, a data portal that we can help facilitate that work. So what we're trying to do with step 7 is to identify data commonalities and gaps in both the PSB's wellbeing assessment and also the RPB's population needs assessment, which is of both interest to the PSB and the RPB. And it's also about reviewing the scope for sharing data between the RPB and the PSB, and to work towards, in the end, that improved alignment between the wellbeing assessment and the population needs assessment, and again, avoiding duplication and additional work for partners. So following the initial meetings in June and July, we had a meeting in September where the regional data group has been established to progress this work, discuss the work that we've started in Swansea Council on identifying population measures, which is primarily developed for the next step, step 8, but is also appropriate and links back to the work for step 7 as well. So colleagues agreed to consider the work that we've done, and that would then enable partners to compile similar lists of data that we could then be used as a means to measure progress in terms of delivering this particular piece of work. So we've had a meeting in January. I think it's fair to say that there have been some delays due to resources, but the work is in hand and actions have been agreed, and another meeting has been scheduled for February to move this forward. So far, there's been more limited progress made on the second action in the step, which is in relation to a regional data portal. However, the group has been made aware of some national developments led by Data Cymru on the development of a potential data portal for PSBs. We understand that is dependent somewhat on finance being provided by Welsh Government, and we would also need to see how far it can be localised as well to meet the regional needs. So what we've done is that we've invited Data Cymru to our next meeting, which will be on the 29th of February. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. And last but not least, step 8, developing Swansea's Public Service Board performance management arrangements. Back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So we do have a framework now in place. The framework consists of this action plan that we're reviewing right now. But in addition to that, it will also consist of population level outcome measures and monitoring arrangements around that. So there's been a lot of work undertaken so far to research and to map potential measures against the wellbeing objectives. And that's quite well advanced and has been discussed at the PSB delivery group with the operational leads. Further work and refinement of those measures has taken place since the last time this was reported. And so the next stage for us is to draft some criteria for the selection of the indicators, which will be finalised shortly and set out for consultation. When it comes to the second part of the action in relation to the annual PSB report, this time we're investigating the possibility of using a video as a medium for presenting the report. So at the moment, we're in the process of scoping that out and discussing it with colleagues in communications and marketing. And then I think we'll be in a position to communicate what we need from partners and leads and how they can contribute to help bring this all together. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Sounds like a really good plan. Okay, so I've whizzed you through the last 3 steps and didn't pause at all for any comments or questions. So I will do so now. So does anyone have any questions or observations on what Richard has taken us through on the last 3 steps? Jennifer?
Yes, just to, I believe, Richard, that you've probably got somebody from within the health board who's also involved in that, because there's quite a good and strong alignment with the work that we're doing around the population health strategy. And we're developing at the moment the strategic indicators for population health. So I think there's some great opportunities there, and it's great to see you nodding your heads so that we are joining these things up, because I think what we've recognised quite quickly as a health board, that when we look at how are we going to measure progress in support of implementing that population health strategy, quite quickly, as most of us here will know, takes us straight out of it's not about healthcare services, it is actually about the conditions of people's lives. So hence that requires this data sharing, as you quite rightly said, and that's where often the challenges arise. Some of it is about whether it's actually possible to share data, but I think more than anything, it's about how we have an ability to generate insight from that. So for me, it's as much about being able to interpret and understand what that says, because data comes in lots and lots of different forms, doesn't it, in terms of then being able to help us know what the position is. And so, as you quite rightly say, there's lots of similar work, and I think it would be good. It's good to know that we're linking that up, because then what we're also looking to do from a health board perspective is to think, what is our contribution as an organisation towards that? So needing to do that little bit of strategic indicators, tactical measures, and then the operational sort of performance, able to sort of look at what our contributions are. So yeah, just wanted to say that it's really good to see that work, and I just wanted to make sure that we were linking up, because we're also looking at some of that digital elements, and as we know, data sharing can be a nightmare. So yeah, just wanted to make sure that we're involved in and contributing to those discussions at these early stages.
Yeah,
thank you, Jennifer. Richard, did you want to come back?
No, just to say yes, we got health representation, so we'll make sure that those things are joined up.
Great, thank you both. Howell?
Yeah, just a comment around kind of health and obviously, the climate change risk assessment. What we know is that the communities that are at greatest risk from climate change is indeed the poorest people in society. So we know they tend to live in the areas where there's poor housing, often close to maybe major highways, networks, industries. So the air quality issues there. And of course, that's likely to be exacerbated as well. We know the majority of the seafront at Swansea is at risk of global warming. It's not a case of when the tides will hit. It's if they'll hit. It's a case of when. So again, those communities are risks. I think it's important we kind of play in maybe the work with the Richard's doing, or what Jennifer's suggesting, around how we model the impact of climate change and how that plays through. And of course, with climate, it's certainly having an impact on food prices, because obviously, the current conditions in the UK at the moment is preventing certain veg being lifted, is pushing up prices, so forth. Potatoes in store, can't get potatoes in the ground for this coming year. So these are all going to have impact on the poorest in society. So whatever we can do locally to address that, I think is quite important. But joining up all those bits is it's very difficult at the moment. So it's just kind of having a look at the big picture. So thanks, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely, Howell. Richard, did you want to respond?
No, nothing particular, Chair. Just to say that we've got representation from across the board, and we're making efforts to make sure that everybody's engaged in the work that we're doing.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Thank you both, and thank you all for your contributions. So that concludes the updates from the steps in our wellbeing plan. So we'll take us on then to item 6. So croeso Jennifer Davis, welcome. Yeah, I think you're here on behalf of Keith Reid, but I'm sure you're also here to present item 6 today, which is Shaping Places in Wales programme. So over to you.
Lovely, thank you very much, Chair. So I'm not sure how familiar people are, and it may well be that some of this information has percolated to your inboxes, but given the volume of information that comes through our inboxes, it may or may not have resonated and landed in terms of its, its relevance really, and why should we pay any attention to it. So this is the Shaping Places for Wellbeing in Wales programme. So this has specifically been designed with PSBs in mind. It comes off the back of funding that the Health Foundation provided to England for various pilots, which has been there now in year 2 of 3, I believe, in terms of their programmes, are very much focused on how do we address well-being, recognising that it's the wider social determinants of health that drive that. And that brings with it the complexities that we're all familiar with in terms of how do we therefore shape the places that people grow, live in, are born into, and so on, and the factors that relate to that. So off the back of that, there's also been a Scottish programme, and that's also shown some success. They've taken very different approaches. But the Health Foundation then approached Wales, they approached Public Health Wales to ask, would this be something that you'd be looking to progress? Is there an interest? And clearly, given that we've got the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, we're probably in one of the best positions from a policy perspective to actually have the levers and to have the infrastructure and as well alongside the policy framework in order to be able to drive this sort of agenda forward. So it was taken up. There's been a longish leading period. There was some funding to work up what might be an appropriate proposal or programme that would be fit for Wales. So rather than looking at what England might have adopted or Scotland, it was really wanting to work with people within the system. That has drawn in the Future Gens Office contributions. There have been contributions from different local government leads, PSB members, various partners in that period. So the programme has now gone through and has been approved by the Health Foundation. So there's a 3-year programme that's funded, of which there'll be an evaluation built into that. It is primarily focused on building our capability and capacity to provide sort of complex system thinking, toolkit, and leadership. So it's instead of trying to look at a didactic way, it's really about sort of recognizing that what we're dealing with is complexity, and that there is a huge science and a body of evidence and knowledge around complexity science, complexity theory, complexity toolkits. It's a plethora, it's all over the place. So what the programme is intended to do is to actually draw in some of that expertise and to help PSBs through chosen sort of individuals. So this is open now. They're looking to have learning cohorts that help to bring representation from different PSBs together to share learning and to, as part of that, use complexity theories, things of using the toolkits and the methodologies to help work through some of the challenges that we're facing in terms of using the PSB and how we're delivering wellbeing outcomes based on the fact that the main drivers are the wider determinants of health. So this is a programme that is kicking off next financial year. And there are going to be 3 national learning cohorts, which will be open to all PSBs. There was a very strong view that it shouldn't be down to choosing to work with 1 or 2 PSBs, and that it should be something that would benefit and has the potential of benefiting all PSB regions. They're therefore sort of looking for people to be nominated, to put themselves forward for being part of these learning cohorts over the next 3 years. And they're also looking for PSBs to propose what sort of thematic areas they might particularly be interested in using this this methodology and what lens we might want to use. So it could be one of the ones that we've already identified. There is a potential shortlist, but we can propose alternative ones. So some of the shortlists that's come through so far, they are fairly broad themes, and they would give an opportunity then to start shaping that, because as you will appreciate, the PSBs are all, whilst they as headlines may look quite similar, there's quite a lot of nuanced differences in terms of what is intended, in terms of what the PSBs are trying to achieve based on what the starting position is and what the future state is that they have articulated that they're journeying towards. So the main ones that have come up at the moment have been climate and nature emergency. So interesting there, Howell, that you've just referenced that. So not a surprise, you'd expect that to be coming up. So that's quite reassuring. There's blue and green spaces, but again, recognition that that may feed into. So, you know, I think these are starting points for a discussion just to give a flavour of. And I think if we want to engage with this, then we've got an opportunity to help shape some of that. We've got one around, or they've articulated that there's one around poverty and inequality. Again, something that, again, well, you've just sort of referenced the interconnectivity. And again, you know, as we look through all of these, there is a huge amount of interconnectedness, and that's where the complexity starts to come in, which is why this is aimed to help us work through that, and how can we use the benefit of that science in order to think about how we're progressing our work. The next two, one is about well-being economies and fair work. And then the final one is neighbourhood connectivity, safety and diversity. So I think there's an opportunity there, and that's all I'm really bringing here. It's been circulated, but I wasn't sure how far it's been circulated and whether people were cognizant of the offer. And so I'm just bringing here really for us to be able to have consideration for it, to try and understand what it might offer us, and to think about how and if the PSB wants to engage with that as an offer, as an All Wales national programme. So the nature of the ask would be, what they're asking for is that they're looking to send out a short programme update briefing in order to capture any of that feedback from any of the discussion today, and I'm happy to do that, or liaise with whoever. Maybe gather some thoughts either by email or here today about some of those indicative areas and whether we'd have a particular strong view on any of those. And then be able to, off the back of whether we want to engage with this, we can feed that back into the leads at Public Health Wales. So this is being run through Public Health Wales, and we've got a route by which we can give that feedback to the advisory group as to what we feel about this as a programme, and any comments and feedback that comes from this discussion. So I'm hoping that was clear. If not, I'm happy to take as many questions as I can based on what I do know about the programme. And there's lots that I don't know, but it might be that others on here have already had sight of it and will also want to add something to what I've just said.
Thank you, Jennifer. I can see Howell has put a comment in the chat. Howell, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I guess interesting. You know, as a city of Swansea, it has kind of gone a long way in recent years on the kind of green infrastructure approach with the new developments down the Kingsway, etc. So that's kind of a very positive step for kind of, you know, reducing vehicle transport, increasing kind of tree cover, etc. And that's been built in. But also it's kind of quite unique in its way. It's the only bathing water, okay, on the footstep, on the doorstep then of a large city population in Wales, I believe. Yes, well, you could argue Llandudno, but it's massive, you know. And it's taken a lot of work to get to that standard, and what people don't realise how much investment, we hear about water quality and issues there, but there's been a huge amount of work being put in by ourselves, the Environment and again Welsh Water, to make sure that those qualities are maintained, those bathing water standards are maintained. So it's quite interesting that the wider benefits that can bring, and maybe it's something we can pick up on the days when we do our walking and footstep days. So we can we'll look at that maybe as a topic to cover further. Thanks.
Thank you, Howell. Jennifer, did you want to come back on that?
No, I think that it's really helpful to recognise our strengths and our assets, isn't it, really, and what contribution that makes, and so that we are cognizant of not overlooking it, sort of in pursuit of other elements. So it's about what that contribution brings and how it can be used as part of that contribution. And I guess then it's what that may or may not be one that we would have an interest in exploring further if we felt that that was, that would bring benefits, maybe through looking at it through the lens of some of the other areas that have been addressed there. So, if we're saying that that's one of our assets, and I think we've got lots of assets on our doorstep, and I suppose the question is, how are they contributing to well-being, and how are they contributing to well-being from an equality and inequality perspective? I think so that therefore what you raise there about that on the doorstep of Swansea is really particularly important, because it gives great accessibility to people maybe who wouldn't ordinarily. And I think that's a really good example. And then how do we build on that in looking at other aspects of how do we address the inequality gap, through the economies? So one of the lenses might be, so with the regeneration of Swansea City, what type of economy is that bringing? What is that likely to lead to? What's our future state? So I suppose what this is offering is that opportunity to share learning, but also to learn about, well, how do we define systems, and then the complexity that comes into, we're all challenged with having to think about issues not through a single lens, but through a multitude of lenses. And that's where the challenges can often trip us up, for obvious reasons I don't need to labour here, I'm sure.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I can see Tracy McNulty has had to leave for another meeting, but she's put in the chat that she's keen on knowing more about this piece of work in terms of our overall destination management, public realm, cultural well-being, etc. And I think, following on from what Howell has said, we are very blessed as a city in terms of the quality of green space. We've got some absolutely fantastic parks, particularly the city centre parks, such as Clyne, Singleton and Bryn Mill, really lovely assets that are free for use. But we've also invested heavily in upgrading the playground equipment in all our communities, which, contributes significantly to young people's health and well-being, encouraging them to be more active and to get outdoors. But alongside all of that, we're still very mindful that there are still families and children who can't afford to travel to the seaside and to the coast, and some children who've never seen the sea. And so, it does seem like a very interesting piece of work. And I think it would be something that would impact on all partner organisations through the PSB. So thank you very much for bringing that here today. I can't see any further hands raised on this item, but did you want to sum up, Jennifer?
Yes, thank you for that. And I agree with you, because it's about recognising the assets, but then also saying, but who are we leaving behind and how do we address that? And that could be on any issue. And I think the fact that Tracy's picked that up and the work that she's doing, along with the work that, was described in relation to, measures and outcomes and how, so it's the whole of that and how do we manage that complexity. So the point of this programme very much is to, as a group of PSBs, there's going to be 3 learning cohorts. They will look at 3 different issues or topics, and we then are invited to join 1, 2, or 3 with whoever we want to put forward, whoever wants to be part of that. And the benefit for us is that we get to do the work that we're intending to do, but we get to learn about tools that help us with those complexities in terms of how we act as senior system leaders. And I think that's the offer here. And I guess it's for us to decide how we want to manage that sort of, that link through. If there's an interest, then it's what process do we want to put forward as to who's going to be part of those learning cohorts. And that can be done via email, whichever method that you feel is appropriate, Chair. But I think to not engage and not have somebody from our PSB involved in some of that, then we could well be losing out on some great opportunities here to develop skills that are transferable to all sorts of areas of our work.
Thank you, Jennifer. And, you know, obviously plenty of food for thought there, and we will take that away and consider it carefully. And I think you're absolutely right. It would be really positive for the Public Service Board to be involved in that piece of work. So thank you for bringing that report here today. That takes us on then, just for information, we have the scrutiny letter. Ness, I don't know if you wanted to say anything. It's been circulated for members' information.
I think just I'd like to recognise that the contents of the letter is perhaps more positive than previous scrutiny responses have been, and I think that recognises the work that we've done in 23-24 to make our actions more tangible and to be able to demonstrate progress more clearly. The only other point to note is that at the end of the letter, it refers to following up in 6 months' time and says that it's been penciled in for the 19th of March for the next scrutiny session. And so it may be that is the next date that we need to go, although I will have a discussion with the clerk, because I think it may be more beneficial to scrutiny committee if they wait until the following month, by which time we'll have our 24-25 action plan presented to this committee, and also have had the opportunity to report on progress for more of the financial year. So I'll come back to committee on that, but it'll either be the 19th of March or potentially April or May that we need to go back to scrutiny again.
Thank you, Ness, and I'd echo your comments. It's really good to have such a positive letter of feedback from scrutiny, and largely thanks to yours and to partners' work in terms of the clear steps and the clear action plans sitting below the wellbeing plan that we have now. So, you know, I think we are in a much stronger position than we once were. And I agree. I think April would be much better timing if the scrutiny committee were willing to move the meeting by 1 month. I think it could make a lot of difference for us, because we'll be in a better position with next year's plan. Roger?
I was going to say it's all down to the chair, obviously.
Of course.
No, I think it just shows we had that quite pointed sort of remarks back in terms of some detailed questions. Some were really valid, to be fair. What value is being added? What are we doing? What are the deliverables? Where's our management information? All very valid in terms of them doing their job as as a scrutiny committee. And I think we've adopted a totally different view. We've got some management information there that they can actually is tangible. It's very difficult sometimes in that qualitative space to actually come up with things that what has changed, what is different. It is quite challenging, but that hasn't sort of stopped us. And I think it's really positive that we've got a far more positive feedback from the scrutiny committee, and I think it's a good stepping stone to take us forward as well. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Roger. Okay, so I can't see any further hands, so we'll move on to the future work programme. And there are 2 items listed there today: Area Planning Board annual report and update on GP clusters. Ness, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, please. Just to say, there has been a discussion about the Area Planning Board in particular, and whether the annual report should come to this committee. It was added onto the work programme as a result of an internal audit report on partnership and governance arrangements within the council. But since then, that was over 12 months ago, and since then discussions have been taking place with regard to the joint Neath Port Talbot and Swansea PSB group that meet specifically to look at the issues of substance misuse. And so the governance arrangements for that group are currently under review, and it's proposed that the Area Planning Board should direct its annual reports to that group going forward rather than to this PSB meeting. And therefore, on that basis, I propose that we remove it from our forward plan.
Thank you, Ness, and I would be fully supportive of that. Obviously, any opportunity that we can take to avoid duplication, bearing in mind how important, resources and people's time. The fact that it's coming to the joint PSB means it is being reported to both Swansea and Neath Talbot. So I think it's an unnecessary level of duplication to bring it here as well, because many members sit on both bodies anyway, so it makes perfect sense. Is everybody content with that approach? Okay, great, thank you for that. And so we've got the future meeting date, which is planned, our next meeting is planned for the 25th of April, and I no doubt will see you in the informal face-to-face meeting that we'll have in between. But until then, thank you all very much for your contributions today and for all the work that you're doing on your particular steps that you're leading on. And again, welcome to Hannah. We look forward to working with you at our future PSB meetings. So thank you all very much for your attendance. I'll see you very soon. Thank you.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Bye.